It gives me great pleasure to be with you this morning. I bring you greetings from our Bishop, Reverend C. Wright, and his entire staff at 2744 Peachtree Road in Atlanta. I bring you greetings from your brothers and sisters, all 50,000 plus souls who gather Sunday after Sunday in Middle North Georgia to worship God. Indeed, it gives me great pleasure, and I'm grateful to Father Ben for inviting me to be with you this morning. I'm delighted to worship with you and to glorify the God whose bountiful grace is always providing us with more than we can ever ask for or imagine. We challenge ourselves and the world to love like Jesus as we worship joyfully, serve compassionately, and grow spiritually. If these words sound familiar to you, it's because those are the words we adopted 2 years ago as our purpose statement in the Diocese of Atlanta. So let me say it again, and it's going to be included in your Episcopal 101 class. Listen very carefully. We challenge ourselves and the world to love like Jesus as we worship joyfully, serve compassionately, and grow spiritually. Purpose. So what is the purpose of the church? What is the purpose of St. Francis in this corner of God's vineyard called Macon? For what purposes did God call each of us this morning to be here today? Before coming to serve on the bishop's staff, I served for 9 years as rector of a parish in Point Pleasant Beach, New Jersey. Next to our town was the town of Belmar, New Jersey. And I was a frequent customer at the local supermarket, call it Acme Supermarket. Every morning, a group of men would gather in the Acme parking lot. And this happened day after day. Depending on what day and what time of the day you drive by, it appears as if these men were just standing there idling. On some occasions, I would see a pickup truck or a van would pull up, and the driver of the van would signal 1 or 2 or 3 people who are standing there to come into his car or his van, and he would take off. Being curious about this thing that happens in Belmar in Acme parking lot, I asked my friend Raymond, who lives in Belmar, what is this thing that I see every morning? And Raymond explained that those were migrant workers, also known as day laborers, who were looking for odd jobs so that they can eke out a living. Ray explained further that sometimes nobody comes by to get any of them. And for some of them, they stand there all day, nobody picking them up. He further remarked, and these were his words, quote, "That's got to be a rough life for someone who is trying to put food on his family's table," end quote. So today's gospel reading reminded me of those men in the Acme parking lot in Belmar, New Jersey. Not every single one gets to be picked for a construction job or a landscaping job. Some of them stand there all day until sundown, only to return home with empty hands, and dare I say, empty stomach. I can only speculate that those who were driving the pickup trucks or the vans that come to pick up the men only select a certain build, men of a certain build or characteristic for the construction jobs. So one can safely argue that those who were left behind standing in the Acme parking lot all day do not meet the standard requirement of the pickup truck drivers. These are the left behind, unchosen, and dare I say, undesirables. During the Great Depression, many union halls had these words emblazoned on their walls: a fair dollar for a fair day's work. A fair dollar for a fair day's work. But in today's parable, Jesus is saying something else. Jesus is speaking about a landowner who goes out to recruit people to work in his vineyard. Early in the morning, he recruits a group of people and said to them, "Work for me and I'll pay you a day's wage." They agreed and they went. A few hours later, he went on and saw other people standing idle. And he said, "What are you doing here standing idle?" He says, "Well, nobody has hired us." "Well, go into the vineyard and work." And again, a few hours later, at noonday, he did the same thing. And at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. But what's surprising is, at 5 o'clock, when the day ends at 6, he sees another group of people standing idle. And when he asked them, they said, "Nobody picked us." He didn't say, "We don't want to work." He said, "Nobody picked us." So he says, "Go into the vineyard." So they went and worked. At the end of the day, he decided to pay the people who had worked in his vineyard and gave them equal pay. No matter how we slice and dice this parable of Jesus, it just doesn't add up. Plain and simple, it is unfair. In fact, the behavior, the attitude of the landowner is so outrageous that I believe every single one of us here would like to join the grievance committee and to picket his vineyard, crying bloody foul. There's something about this story that makes us align ourselves more closely with those workers who were hired early in the morning. Indeed, some of us have been at this Christian faith business since birth. We have been toiling in this Episcopal brand of the Jesus movement for a very long time. We are lifers. They even have a name for us: Cradle Episcopalians. And so when the Johnny-come-latelys just show up and they get the same treatment as we do, we are outraged, justifiably so. Yes, it's true that the Bible says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are my ways your ways, says the Lord." But at least God's ways ought to be fair, shouldn't it? A fair dollar for a fair day's work. Did somebody forget to tell God about this? And when the early laborers became the grievance committee and complained to God, what did God say? "Take your wages and get out." Seriously, God? Seriously? Where are we to go? Having toiled for so long and endured so much for your sake, where else are we to go? Can't we at least get recognized for being at this kingdom work for such a long time? Is that too much to ask, God? Is that too much to ask? Why are those who just found their way into the vineyard getting the same reward as we are? But then we begin to catch on, you see. Friend, did you hear that? The Lord called us friend. Friend, did I not give you what you bargained for? Bargained? Is that what got us into the vineyard in the first place? Have we been bargaining with God with our faith? In his seminal book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, Harold Kushner asks his readers this question, quote, "Will God still be all-powerful if we, by living virtuous lives, can compel God to reward us? Or will God then be reduced to a kind of cosmic vending machine into which we insert the right number of tokens and from which we get what we want, with the option of kicking and cursing the vending machine if it doesn't give us what we paid for. Now, if you've ever had a vending machine with your Snicker bar, just as it was coming out, rotating, get stuck, you would know what this feels like. If you've been like me, you would have shaken that damn thing until it comes out. At that point in that vending machine, God help me, I'm going to have my candy. Bargain? Is that what we have been doing with our faith? Certainly. If we have worked hard for God's kingdom, we wouldn't want someone who showed up at the last minute to get into the kingdom for free. Do we? Seriously? Until we are reminded of the guy on the cross who had killed several people, who had a chance of trying to come to Jesus' defense, got a free pass. This day, you will be with me in paradise. Let's chew on that. Here we have a God who would throw out the accounting books, not keeping any record of time, but freely doling out generous rewards to those who would come and work in his vineyard. The parable of the vineyard workers upends our worldview, you see, and our human desire to be recognized for our hard work. With the early morning workers, we are shocked at the landowner's response to our grumbling, even outraged at his attitude at our grievance. But thanks be to God for not counting those hours, for God knows how terribly flawed I am to be worthy of such an amazing generosity. My friends, in God's economy, everything is free-flowing grace. Free-flowing grace. Certainly God did not say to himself, you see how hard those Christians at St. Francis are working? Let me go and die on the cross for them. Certainly God didn't count our efforts to give of God's self, to come and pitch God's tent in our midst and die for our sins. We can't earn God's grace. We can't deserve God's merciful kindness. And certainly we can't be moral enough to deserve God's generosity. Those who choose to bargain their way into heaven can take their reward and go. In God's world, everything is grace, unmerited, undeserved grace. Everyone is invited into God's vineyard. Everyone, especially the forgotten and the left behind. Perhaps the church can learn something from this parable as we seek to discern what is our purpose in God's vineyard. Perhaps we can learn to fling our doors wide open and invite all to come in, not measuring their stature or their status, but welcoming all into God's vineyard. For we are all on the same team. We're working for the same King. We're all doing the kingdom work. We're working for a God who never forgets and always rewards abundantly, more than we can ever ask or imagine. Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who goes out to hire laborers in his vineyard. And so here are some truths about God, the God who called each of us into the vineyard. God pursues us. God comes looking for us. And when he finds us idle, God calls us and invites us into a relationship. God gives us enough for our sustenance. And so Jesus taught his disciples to pray, give us this day our daily bread. Not this week or this month our allowances, but this day our daily bread. Enough to sustain us from day to day. 3. God calls us, all of us, whether we are called early in the morning or later in the day. The invitation is for all of humanity to come into a relationship with God. And God's generosity will always be towards all. God is ever faithful. God is an ever faithful, promise-keeping God. And his promise is love, abundant love. And so we challenge ourselves in the world to love like Jesus as we worship joyfully, serve compassionately, and grow spiritually. May the Lord, who has called each of us into this vineyard, grant us the courage to love like Jesus. Amen.
Amen.